Lucas Hale was nothing special. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't even anyone people remembered unless you counted being the guy who fixed things on the space station. He was a mechanic, and that was all he ever expected to be. It was a quiet life, filled with grease and machines far from Earth. But there were moments when he'd look out of the small port window, beyond the station's cold metal walls, and wonder about home. The home he hadn't seen in years, Earth. He'd heard the rumors, the whispers about Earth's place in the galaxy, how its people were nothing more than a primitive species, how it was a tiny, insignificant planet, tucked away in the outermost reaches of the galaxy, protected by nothing but its isolation. The ancient species that ruled the stars had long ago dismissed Earth as inconsequential. The oldest races, the ones who had conquered and destroyed entire worlds, saw no reason to worry about humans. That was until the warnings came. The message that arrived that morning changed everything. The station's alarm blared, sending a wave of panic through the usual routine. Lucas barely looked up from the engine he was working on. These alarms were a common nuisance. But then the words on the screen stopped him cold. Warning, unidentified fleet detected. Immediate evacuation order. Possible galactic hostile encounter. All personnel report to the control room. Something in his gut twisted. This wasn't a drill. The words galactic hostile encounter had a weight to them, a finality. Lucas wiped the grease from his hands and hurried toward the control room, his mind racing. When he arrived, the sight was worse than he could have imagined. The crew was frantic, shouting over each other, eyes glued to the screens. An officer, his face pale, looked up from the comms panel as Lucas entered. "Lucas, you're here. Good, we need your help," the officer said, his voice strained. "We've detected a fleet approaching Earth, a large one. The system's defenses are inadequate." "What do you mean, inadequate?" Lucas asked, his voice tight. "Earth got no military to speak of." The officer nodded grimly. "That's just it, the fleet. It's not just any fleet. We've identified it as a Galthrex armada. You know who they are." Lucas shook his head. The name sounded vaguely familiar, but the details were unclear. The Galthrex were ancient, one of the oldest species in the galaxy, but they were also shrouded in mystery. No one really talked about them. They didn't need to. Their power and influence were so overwhelming that they had long been forgotten by most. But one thing was clear: no one wanted to face them. "The Galthrex are conquerors," the officer continued. "They've wiped out countless civilizations, entire species. No one stands against them, and Earth is unprepared. They'll be here in less than an hour. We need to evacuate." Lucas felt his heart pounding in his chest. He had never been a fighter. He wasn't equipped for this. But Earth was his home. It didn't matter that he was just a mechanic. He had to do something. "What can we do?" Lucas asked, stepping forward. "I'm not trained to fight. I can't help you with this." The officer looked at him, his expression hardening. "The station can't stop them. We don't have the firepower, but there is a theory, an old theory. It's a long shot, but—" Lucas didn't wait for him to finish. "Tell me." The officer hesitated before pulling up an old map of Earth's history on the screen. "We've found ancient records, stories about a power hidden within Earth itself, something that the Galthrex were aware of, but didn't fully understand. A power that even they feared. Something buried deep within your species. The warning was clear: humans are not to be underestimated." The officer's words hung in the air, impossible to ignore. "The Galthrex know about this power. That's why they're coming. They've dismissed it for centuries, but now they want it." Lucas stared at the officer, trying to make sense of what he was hearing. "What power? What are you talking about?" "It's not just about Earth," the officer continued, his voice barely a whisper. "It's something within humans. Their resilience, their adaptability, their will to survive. The Galthrex thought they could control that power, but they never fully understood it. Now they want it, and they'll destroy everything to get it." Lucas didn't know whether to believe the officer. It sounded like something out of a myth, but the look in his eyes was real. The panic in the control room was real, and the incoming fleet was real. A harsh beeping interrupted his thoughts. The officer's eyes widened in alarm. "They're closing in. We don't have much time." Lucas stood there for a moment, frozen. His mind raced. Earth, the planet he had come from, the one he had left behind for so many years, it was in danger. His home, the place where everything had begun. The officer's voice broke through the haze in Lucas's mind. "We need you to take this shuttle to Earth. You have to warn them. You have to help them prepare. You're the only one who can reach them in time." Lucas swallowed hard. He wasn't a soldier, he wasn't even a hero, but Earth needed him. And somehow, despite the fear and doubt creeping in, he knew what he had to do. "I'll go," Lucas said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'll do what I can, for Earth." The shuttle rumbled to life and Lucas felt a chill run down his spine. The control panel flickered with warnings, the ship's systems barely holding together as they prepared to break through the atmosphere. He wasn't ready for this. He was just a mechanic. The idea of flying a ship into combat, heading straight for the heart of a massive enemy fleet, seemed like a cruel joke, but there was no time for fear. His mind raced back to the conversation with the officer. The Galactic, the ancient conquerors who had destroyed entire civilizations, were headed for Earth. And they weren't just coming to wipe out the humans, they were after something else. Something hidden deep within the human race itself. Lucas didn't understand it, but the urgency was clear. Earth was in danger. His home was in danger. And he was the only one who could help. "You can do this, Lucas," he muttered to himself, gripping the shuttle's controls tighter. "Just get there. You just have to get there." The shuttle shook as it passed through the atmosphere. He pulled the lever to steady it, his breath shallow. The planet below looked peaceful, a vast blue and green sphere. But beneath that calm exterior, Lucas knew that everything was about to change. His planet, the one that had been overlooked for so long, was under attack. And if the Galactics had their way, nothing would ever be the same. Lucas focused on the task at hand. The officer had said there was a way to fight back, but it wasn't going to be easy. Earth had no army, no defenses against an enemy this powerful. The Galactics had long since dismissed Earth as unimportant, and in doing so, they had ignored a warning from the galaxy's oldest civilizations. The warning about humans. But Lucas didn't have the luxury of thinking about that now. His mind snapped back to the present as the shuttle lurched, jolting through another wave of turbulence. Come on," Lucas whispered, sweat beading on his forehead. He adjusted the thrusters, trying to regain control. "I need to get to Earth." The shuttle's descent grew smoother as Lucas approached Earth's surface. He had no idea where he was going. He didn't know who would listen or what exactly he was supposed to do. All he had was a simple instruction: warn them. Get to Earth and make sure they knew what was coming. The landing was rough. The shuttle's engines sputtered, barely keeping them afloat, but Lucas managed to guide it toward an old military facility that had been hidden away in Earth's more remote regions. He hadn't known this place existed, but the officer had told him it was his best shot. If Earth had any chance of defending itself, this was the place. He landed with a heavy thud, the shuttle's hull groaning under the strain. As soon as the ramp lowered, Lucas rushed out into the cold, dimly lit facility. His boots echoed through the empty halls as he ran, the air thick with dust. The place looked abandoned, old equipment scattered around, long forgotten by time. But the facility's silent halls hid a dark secret, a secret that could turn the tide against the Galactics. "Hello?" Lucas's voice bounced off the walls, and he felt a flicker of uncertainty. There was no one here. Then a voice broke the silence, harsh and authoritative. "You're not supposed to be here." Lucas whipped around, startled. A woman in military gear stepped out from the shadows, her eyes sharp, scanning him with suspicion. "Who are you?" Lucas hesitated. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't even sure who he was supposed to be in this moment. "I'm Lucas. I was sent to warn you. The Galactics are coming. They're attacking Earth." The woman's expression didn't soften. "You've come too late. The Galthrex fleet is already in the atmosphere. There's nothing we can do." "No," Lucas's voice cracked. He wasn't ready to give up yet. "There has to be something we can do. I was told there's something here, a weapon, something that could stop them." She eyed him carefully before giving a reluctant nod. "You're right, but it's not just any weapon. It's something buried deep beneath Earth. It's been hidden for millennia, and if we use it, we'll awaken something that might not be controllable." Lucas's heart pounded in his chest. He didn't have time for hesitation. "What choice do we have if the Galthrex get to Earth?" "If the Galthrex get to Earth, they will take what they need and they'll destroy what they don't. But using the power beneath us comes with a price. It's not just a weapon. It's part of Earth itself. It has been waiting, but no one really knows how to control it." "I'll do whatever it takes," Lucas said, his voice firm, surprising even himself. "I have to stop them. I'm not a soldier, but Earth is my home. I won't let it fall without a fight." The woman looked at him for a long moment, studying his face. Then she sighed. "You'll need to follow me. I can't promise anything, but if you're serious, I'll help you." They moved quickly, heading deeper into the facility. The woman led him to a hidden elevator, its walls worn by time. They descended for what seemed like an eternity, the darkness growing thicker as they went deeper underground. Finally, the elevator stopped with a low thud, and the doors opened into a massive cavern. At its center stood a structure unlike anything Lucas had ever seen. It was ancient, covered in strange symbols that pulsed with an eerie energy. The air around it seemed to hum, as if alive. "This is it," the woman said, her voice reverberating in the cavern. "The weapon, but it's not just something you can use. It's something you need to understand. It's connected to Earth, to humanity, and once you activate it, there's no going back." Lucas's eyes widened as he stepped forward, his breath catching in his throat. There was something about the structure that felt familiar. He wasn't sure why, but it was as if he was meant to be there. The weight of what lay before him settled into his chest. "I'm ready," Lucas said, his voice steady. He had no choice. He didn't understand the weapon, but if it was Earth's last hope, he would do whatever it took to unlock its power. The woman nodded. "Then you'll need to place your hand on the core. Trust your instincts. Humanity's future is in your hands now." As Lucas stepped closer to the glowing core, he didn't know what was about to happen. He only knew one thing: Earth wasn't just a planet. It was a part of him, and he would fight to protect it. Whatever came next, he would face it head-on. Lucas stood in front of the glowing core, his heart pounding against his chest. The room felt heavy, as if the air itself was charged with electricity. The ancient structure before him hummed with an energy he could barely comprehend. It wasn't just a weapon. The woman had said it was part of Earth, part of humanity's very essence. And now, for the first time in his life, Lucas realized how much he had underestimated his home. The woman who had introduced herself as Commander Rhea watched him closely. "You have to trust it," she said quietly. Her voice was calm, but Lucas could see the uncertainty in her eyes. "This power, it's been waiting. It's meant for someone like you, someone who's still connected to Earth." "Connected to Earth," Lucas repeated, confusion clouding his thoughts. "I'm just a mechanic. I'm not a soldier. How could I possibly be connected to all of this?" "You're more than just a mechanic, Lucas," Rhea replied, her gaze softening. "All humans are. That's what makes you different from every species the Galthrex have encountered. Your resilience, your will to fight, it's in you. And in that core, it's awakened. But it needs you to awaken with it." Lucas stared at the core, its glowing surface drawing him in. He could feel the weight of Rhea's words, but the fear still lingered. He had no idea what would happen if he touched it. The Galthrex were already closing in. The warning in the ancient texts had said this weapon could either save humanity or destroy it. But the way things were going, Lucas didn't have much of a choice. "I don't have much time, do I?" Lucas muttered, his eyes still locked on the core. Rhea didn't respond right away. She simply nodded, a sad, knowing look in her eyes. "The Galthrex don't wait. They never do. but the moment you activate it, nothing will ever be the same. Lucas stepped forward, his feet heavy as he approached the glowing orb. The closer he got, the more he could feel the energy pulsing around him as if it were calling to him. His body buzzed, the sensation almost painful, but deep down, Lucas knew that this was his moment, Earth's moment. "Here goes nothing," he whispered, before reaching out and placing his palm gently against the core. The instant his skin touched the surface, a jolt of energy shot through him. It wasn't like anything he had ever felt before. It was warm at first, like a soft current running through his veins, but then it exploded. The light around him grew blinding, and he could feel the power of Earth's core flooding into his body, as if he was being consumed by it. He gasped, his heart racing. Pain shot through his chest, but it wasn't a physical pain. It was something deeper, something primal. His entire being felt like it was being reshaped, remade. The core's energy filled his mind with images, visions of the past, of humanity's struggle to survive, of ancient civilizations lost to time. He saw the rise and fall of species, of worlds that had once existed and had been erased by forces greater than themselves. But through it all there was one constant: Earth, humanity. Suddenly, everything stopped. Lucas staggered back, breaking contact with the core. The room went silent, the energy around him fading as quickly as it had come. His legs gave out and he collapsed to his knees, breathing heavily. Sweat poured down his face, and his head throbbed with the weight of what had just happened. "Lucas," Ria's voice cut through the fog. She was standing beside him, her hand on his shoulder, her expression filled with concern. "Are you okay?" I don't know," Lucas gasped, still trying to regain his composure. His body was trembling, but he felt different, stronger. The pain was still there, but it was fading, replaced by something else, something he couldn't explain. "What happened?" Ria asked, kneeling beside him. Lucas took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. "I saw everything. I saw the history of Earth, the rise of humanity, the battles we've fought, the ones we've lost." He paused, his eyes wide with shock. "And I felt something inside me. It was like the Earth itself was talking to me." Ria's eyes softened. "You've unlocked it, the power that's been hidden for so long. The core connects you to everything that Earth is, its history, its future, and now it's connected to you." Lucas stood shakily, still feeling the lingering effects of the core's energy. "But what does it mean? What do I do with this power? I'm just a mechanic. I can't." "You're not just a mechanic anymore, Lucas," Ria interrupted, her voice firm yet comforting. "You're Earth's protector. This power, it's not just about defeating the Galthrex. It's about giving humanity a future. The strength, the resilience, the heart of humanity, it's in you now. It always has been." Lucas stared at her, the weight of her words sinking in. He had always thought of himself as insignificant. He wasn't a warrior, not a hero, just a man trying to survive. But in that moment, everything changed. The power he felt wasn't just for destruction. It wasn't just about fighting the Galthrex. It was about something deeper. Earth was counting on him. Humanity was counting on him. He turned toward the massive door of the facility, where the faint sound of explosions could still be heard in the distance. "I have to stop them," he said, his voice low but filled with determination. "Earth isn't just a planet, it's a part of me. I won't let the Galthrex take that." Ria nodded, her expression softening with respect. "Then let's go, Lucas. You're not alone in this." As they turned to leave the chamber, Lucas's mind was clearer than it had been before. The fear still lingered, but so did the strength, the understanding that he was no longer just a bystander. He was humanity's last hope, and he wasn't going to fail. The Galthrex had made a terrible mistake. They had dismissed Earth, and now they were going to pay the ultimate price. Lucas stood in the dimly lit hallway of the facility, his hands still tingling from the touch of the core. The power within him was overwhelming, but it wasn't just the energy that terrified him. It was the responsibility, the weight of what he had just unleashed. He wasn't sure he was ready for any of this, but there was no turning back now. Beside him, Rhea was already gathering supplies, her movements swift and precise. The urgency in the air was thick, palpable. The Galthrex fleet was still out there, hovering over Earth. They were waiting, and Lucas knew that every second counted. Lucas, Rhea said, breaking through his thoughts. Her voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. We don't have much time. The Galthrex are preparing their final assault. If we don't act now, Earth's defenses will be completely overwhelmed. Lucas nodded, the weight of her words sinking in. He couldn't waste any more time questioning himself. He was the only one who could stop them. But as he followed Rhea through the corridors, his mind kept coming back to the core, to the power he had felt coursing through him. What was he supposed to do with it? How could he control it? And most importantly, could he even survive it? The feeling of uncertainty gnawed at him, but the fire in his chest, the one that had awakened with the core's power, kept pushing him forward. Earth had always been just a place he came from, a distant memory of blue skies and green fields. But now it was his responsibility. It was a part of him. The door to the command center slid open and they stepped into the heart of the facility. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. Officers and resistance fighters were gathered around tables, their eyes focused on the holographic maps and data streaming across the screens. The urgency in the air was palpable. They were all waiting for one thing: a plan. Rhea immediately walked over to the main terminal, where a young technician was working furiously at the controls. "Status report," Rhea ordered, her voice sharp. The technician looked up, her face pale. "The Galthrex fleet has broken through Earth's initial defenses. We've managed to slow them down, but it won't last much longer. Their main assault is imminent." Lucas felt a knot tighten in his stomach. It was worse than he had thought. The Galthrex weren't just here to conquer, they were here to destroy, to wipe Earth from existence. And Earth had nothing left to fight them with except for him. Rhea turned to Lucas, her eyes meeting his. There was no fear in her gaze, only resolve. "We have one shot at this. The core's energy is our only advantage. If we can get to the Galthrex flagship and disable their systems, we can cripple their fleet." Lucas felt his chest tighten. "How do we get to the flagship? The Galthrex ships are too strong, we're outnumbered." "We don't have to fight them head-on," Rhea said. "We use their weakness. The Galthrex rely on their command ship to control the fleet. If we take it out, we cut off their coordination. The rest of their fleet will fall apart." Lucas's eyes narrowed. "And how exactly do you plan to do that?" "We'll board their flagship using a covert strike team. I know it's risky, but it's our only shot," Rhea said. "You'll lead the way, Lucas." The words hit Lucas like a ton of bricks. "Lead the way? I'm not a soldier. I'm not qualified for this." Rhea stepped closer, her voice soft but firm. "You've already done the impossible. You're not just a mechanic anymore, Lucas. You're the one who holds the key to saving Earth. The Galthrex underestimated you. They've underestimated us. Now we make them regret it." Lucas swallowed hard. The pressure of it all felt like 1,000 tons on his shoulders. But as he looked around at the faces of the resistance, the people who were counting on him, something inside him stirred. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about everyone, about Earth, about humanity's survival. "I'll do it," Lucas said, his voice steady. "I'll lead the strike team." Rhea gave him a firm nod. "Good, we don't have much time, let's move." The next few hours passed in a blur. Lucas found himself standing in front of a small, hastily assembled team, all geared up and ready for the mission. There were 5 of them in total, all highly trained, but none of them were as nervous as Lucas. He felt the weight of the mission settle deep in his bones. He had no military experience, no combat training, but he was the one who had unlocked the core's power. He had to lead them. He had to make this work. A shuttle was waiting on the launch pad. It was a small stealth vessel capable of sneaking past enemy lines. It wasn't much, but it was all they had. Lucas climbed aboard first, the others following closely behind. Rhea was beside him, her eyes sharp and focused. "You can do this, Lucas," Rhea said, her voice low. "Remember, you're not alone. You're part of something bigger now. Humanity is counting on you." Lucas nodded, his heart beating louder than ever. He wasn't just part of something bigger. He was that something. This wasn't just about the shuttle, the mission, or even the Galthrex. This was about everything he had ever known, about protecting the future of the planet that had given him life. The shuttle doors closed, and they were off, soaring into the sky toward the Galthrex flagship. The journey was swift, the shuttle cutting through the atmosphere like a shadow. As they neared the enemy flagship, the massive ship appeared on the horizon, a dark mass that loomed over Earth like a predator stalking its prey. The scale of the Galthrex fleet was unlike anything Lucas had ever seen. It was terrifying. But as Lucas looked out the window, something inside him changed. The core's power was still inside him, pulsing with energy, and for the first time he understood its purpose. It wasn't just about strength. It was about resilience. It was about survival. They were going to win. They had to. "Prepare to board," Rhea said, breaking through his thoughts. "This is it." Shuttle hummed with the soft, constant pulse of its engines, the atmosphere inside heavy with anticipation. Lucas sat in the pilot's seat, his hands gripping the controls with a tension that made his knuckles white. The others in the small craft were quiet, each lost in their own thoughts, but their presence was a comfort. They weren't just his team, they were his responsibility. Every one of them was relying on him. Earth was counting on him. "Get ready," Rhea's voice broke through the silence, sharp and clear. She was seated behind him, her eyes scanning the screens. "We're almost there." Lucas glanced at the viewport. In the distance, the Galthrex flagship loomed like a dark monolith, its vast size impossible to ignore. Its surface was a mix of jagged black metal and strange glowing lights, an eerie sight that filled Lucas with a sense of foreboding. The ship was like a giant predator, circling its prey. The shuttle shuddered as it neared the flagship's defensive perimeter. They had to be precise. Even a small misstep could lead to their destruction. The Galthrex ships had advanced sensor technology, and the slightest movement would alert them. "We have to land on the flagship's lower docking bay," Rhea said, her voice calm but intense. "Once we're inside, we'll split into two teams. I'll lead one group to disable their weapon systems. You'll lead the other to the central control room." Lucas nodded, though his throat felt dry. He wasn't used to this. The tension, the fear, the weight of the mission. But his hands, still trembling from the power of the core, guided the shuttle through the gap in the enemy defenses with surprising precision. As they got closer to the flagship, Lucas could feel his pulse quicken. The fear was there, but so was something else. A fire that had ignited when the core's power had coursed through him. It was more than just energy. It was purpose. Humanity's resilience was now his, and he knew that he wasn't just fighting for Earth anymore. He was fighting for every person, every family, every life that had ever called Earth home. "Steady," Rhea muttered from behind him. "Just a little more." The shuttle passed through the final defense layers, its stealth systems working to keep them hidden. Lucas's eyes never left the massive Galthrex ship. They were almost there. His hand moved instinctively, guiding the shuttle toward the designated landing bay. The minutes seemed to stretch, the weight of the situation pressing down on him harder with every second. With a final surge of focus, Lucas brought the shuttle down gently onto the flagship's landing platform. The craft shuddered as the landing gear met solid ground. The metal hissed as the airlocks engaged. "Go," Rhea said, her voice sharp. "We don't have long before they realize we're here." Lucas stood, his legs shaky but determined. The shuttle doors opened with a soft hiss, and the team quickly filed out. The air inside the flagship was cold, sterile, and filled with an oppressive silence. Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that the ship itself was alive, watching them. It felt like they were walking into the belly of the beast. "Stay close," Rhea ordered, leading the group forward. The corridors were dark, illuminated only by flickering lights along the walls. The team moved quickly, weapons drawn, hearts pounding in their chests. Lucas could feel the power of the core still humming in the back of his mind, a constant presence that filled him with both strength and uncertainty. He wasn't sure how much longer he could keep this up. The power was incredible, but it was alien to him. He had never been trained for anything like this. The team reached the first set of security doors. Rhea moved forward, inputting a series of commands into the terminal beside the door. The seconds felt like hours as they waited for the lock to disengage. Lucas's eyes darted nervously between the team members. They were all counting on him. With a soft click, the door slid open. Inside, the room was a maze of consoles, flashing screens, and strange alien technology. It was the heart of the ship, the Galactic's command center. Lucas's breath caught in his throat. This was it. This was where they would either win or lose. Rhea quickly took control. "We need to get to the control room. Lucas, head for the central hub. Disrupt their command network. We need to cut their coordination." "Understood," Lucas replied, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside him. They split into two teams, Lucas leading one group toward the central hub, the others moving to disable the weapons. The corridors were tighter here, the air thicker, but Lucas kept moving. His feet echoed in the silence, the only sound in the vastness of the Galactic ship. He couldn't afford to fail. Not now, not after everything Earth had been through. Suddenly, an alarm blared, deafening and sharp. Red lights began flashing, and the doors ahead of them began to close. "They know we're here," one of the team members whispered. Lucas cursed under his breath. "We have to keep moving." They sprinted forward just as the doors slammed shut behind them. Ahead, the central control room stood like a fortress. There were guards, Galactic soldiers, towering in their black armor. They turned as the team entered, their eyes glowing with cold malice. Without hesitation, Lucas raised his weapon and fired. The energy pulse hit one of the guards square in the chest, sending him flying backward. But the others didn't hesitate. They charged. "Cover fire," Lucas shouted, his voice hoarse. The team fired in unison, forcing the Galactic soldiers to fall back. Lucas's heart hammered in his chest as he pushed forward, adrenaline pumping through his veins. He could feel the core's power inside him, but this wasn't the time for doubt. He was humanity's shield. They couldn't afford to lose. The door to the central hub slid open and Lucas's team flooded in. It was now or never. He ran toward the central console, his fingers flying over the alien keys. The system was complex, but Lucas didn't stop. Every second mattered. He was close, he could feel it. Just as the Galactic's forces regrouped, Lucas pressed the final key, initiating the shutdown sequence. The entire ship trembled. A crackling voice came over the comms. "Human, you think you've won." Lucas's eyes narrowed as the ship shuddered. "We already have," he muttered. The flagship shuddered beneath Lucas's feet as the countdown echoed in his ear. The entire ship seemed to vibrate, as if it was struggling against the damage they had inflicted. The Galactics were on the brink of losing control, but the fight wasn't over. Not yet. "Lucas," Rhea's voice crackled through the comms, tense but steady. "The Galactics are not going to go down without a fight. The fleet is about to launch a counterattack. We need to get out of here now." Lucas looked up at the central console, his fingers still poised above the final command key. He had just disabled the flagship's command systems, but the Galactics were adapting faster than anyone had predicted. The ship was already sending out distress signals. They had minutes, maybe seconds, before reinforcements arrived. The countdown on the terminal flashed in bold red letters, 00:03:45. "We don't have time for a full escape," Lucas said, his voice tight. He could hear his own breath coming out in uneven gasps. His heart was still racing from the fight, but there was no time to stop now. "I need to finish this." "Finish what?" Rhea's voice was sharp, questioning. "Lucas, don't. I'm not leaving until this is done. We're stopping the Galactics once and for all." Lucas moved quickly, his fingers flying over the console. He wasn't sure what he was doing. The Galactic systems were unlike anything he'd ever worked with. Their technology was alien, incomprehensible, but in that moment it didn't matter. The core's power inside him was still humming, a constant presence, and it was guiding his every move. He could feel the energy surging through his hands as he typed in commands, his eyes darting back and forth across the flickering screens. The ship was falling apart. Systems were failing everywhere. But he knew that as long as he stayed focused, he could bring it all down. The Galthrex couldn't keep control of a ship that had no leadership. "Lucas, what are you doing?" Ria's voice came through again, full of panic this time. But Lucas didn't respond. He couldn't. The last command was in, and he could feel the tension in the air, the feeling of the final moments ticking down. With a final press of the key, he hit enter. The flagship jolted violently, the ship groaning as the last of its systems shut down. The massive structure seemed to scream in protest, but the damage was done. The Galthrex had lost their main control. They were completely cut off. The countdown on the terminal flashed again. 000001. "I did it," Lucas breathed, stepping back from the console, his body swaying from exhaustion. "It's done." But just as the finality of the moment settled in, the comms crackled again, and a chilling voice filled the air. "Human, you think you've won." Lucas's breath caught. The voice was deep, guttural, and it resonated in his chest. It wasn't just any voice. This was the leader of the Galthrex, the one who had commanded the invasion of Earth, the one who had dismissed humanity as insignificant. "I don't need to think," Lucas said, his voice steady despite the rising fear inside him. "You're finished. The fleet is broken. You have nothing left." There was a pause, the silence deafening. Then the voice returned, colder than before. "You have no idea what you've done. You've awoken something much darker than you realize." Lucas frowned. He could hear the fear in the leader's tone now, something he hadn't expected. Was it possible? Had they truly underestimated Earth's power? Could they have made a mistake this large? "I've stopped your invasion," Lucas replied, his voice now full of resolve. "That's all that matters." But the Galthrex leader's voice came back, dripping with menace. "The true power of Earth has only just begun to stir, and you will be its first test." Before Lucas could respond, the entire flagship began to tremble again. This time, it wasn't the ship fighting back. It was something else, something darker. The walls rattled, and Lucas felt a sudden, overwhelming surge of energy from the core. It was unlike anything he had experienced before. The ground beneath him seemed to pulse in time with the heartbeat of the ship. Ria's voice came through the comms, urgent and panicked. "Lucas, what's happening?" I don't know," Lucas gasped. The power inside him was growing, expanding. It felt like the very fabric of the ship was alive, thrumming with energy, and it was pulling him in. "Ria, something's wrong, the core. It's too much." As he spoke, the energy began to shift, becoming less like an extension of him and more like something that controlled him. His body tensed. The raw force of Earth's power had become an overwhelming torrent, and he could feel it pulling at every part of his being. "You need to get out, Lucas," Ria's voice screamed. "Now this ship is about to explode." But it was too late. The core had already linked to him, and Lucas wasn't sure if he could control it anymore. The energy surged through him, a violent, unstoppable force, pulling him toward the central chamber. The flagship shuddered violently, the very walls groaning under the immense strain of the core's power. Lucas's body was on fire as the energy coursed through him, his every nerve alight with the intensity of it. His legs gave way and he collapsed to the floor, unable to stand against the force anymore. He closed his eyes, bracing for what was coming. And then there was silence. For a moment everything stopped. The humming of the core, the poolsing of energy, the shaking of the ship, it all went quiet, the calm before the storm. Lucas opened his eyes and slowly pushed himself to his feet. He had no idea what had just happened, but he knew one thing. The Galthrex fleet was no longer a threat. The flagship was dead in the water, and Earth was safe. But as he looked up, the reality of what he had just unlocked hit him. The power of Earth, it was real. It wasn't just something that could be controlled, nor something that could be wielded without consequences. He had awoken a force that was tied to humanity's very soul. The galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again. Lucas couldn't feel his legs. The power from the core was still surging inside him, a constant hum beneath his skin, but it was different now. It wasn't just energy. It was alive. He could feel it, a part of him, and yet so much bigger than he could control. The flagship was silent. The trembling had stopped. The constant hum that had filled the ship's corridors was now gone, replaced by a suffocating stillness. Ria's voice crackled through the comms, broken with static. "Lucas, do you copy?" "Yeah," Lucas breathed, his voice rough. "I hear you." "What happened?" "The flagship systems, they just shut down. The Galthrex forces are retreating." Ria's voice carried an edge of disbelief. "Did you do it?" Lucas didn't answer right away. His mind was still reeling from the flood of energy that had passed through him. The core's power had overwhelmed him, and for a brief moment he thought he might not survive it. The sheer intensity of it had felt like a tidal wave, and he hadn't known if he could stay afloat. But then something in him had clicked. He had found his focus, that deep primal connection to Earth, and in that moment he knew what he had to do. "I did," Lucas said quietly. "I disabled their fleet. The flagship is dead." "And the Galthrex?" "They're not coming back," Lucas said, a sense of finality in his words. "But neither are we." "What do you mean?" Ria asked, her voice growing urgent. The truth hit him like a freight train. The power of the core, the force of Earth, had changed him. It wasn't just a weapon anymore. It was a force of nature, a force that had connected with his very being. And he had unlocked it, but it came at a cost. The core's energy was too much for a human body to hold for long. His vision was blurry and his heart beat faster than it should, but it didn't matter. Earth was safe. That was all that mattered. "I'm not sure I can control it anymore, Ria," Lucas said, his voice shaking. "The core's power, it's too much. I don't know how long I can hold on." A silence followed. Then Ria's voice came through again, softer now, filled with concern. "Lucas, you've done more than anyone could have asked. You've saved Earth. But you're right, we need to get you out of there." "I don't think I can leave," Lucas replied, a faint, bitter laugh escaping his lips. "The core has changed me. I can feel it. I've awakened something deep within this planet, and it's not something I can just walk away from." Ria didn't say anything for a moment, and when she spoke again, there was no fear in her voice, just understanding. "We'll find a way to help you. You've given us everything. We owe you that." Lucas closed his eyes, feeling the weight of her words. He had always thought he was just a small part of Earth's story, just a mechanic trying to get by. But now, standing in the quiet of the Galthrex flagship, he realized that he had become part of something much bigger than himself. Earth's fight wasn't over, but he had ensured its survival. He had become its protector. Suddenly, a tremor ran through the ship. The entire vessel shook with a force that threw Lucas to the ground. His heart skipped a beat as the sensation grew stronger, almost unbearable. The energy inside him surged again, more intense than before, and he gasped for air. It felt like the core itself was reaching out, demanding more than he could give. The room around him began to blur and the world seemed to spin. He tried to stand, but his body wouldn't cooperate. Every nerve in his body screamed for release, but there was no escape. The power was consuming him, draining him, and he realized with a sickening certainty that this was the price of his actions. He had awakened something ancient, something tied to Earth's very soul, but it wasn't meant for human hands. "Ria," he gasped, trying to steady his breath. "I can't hold on much longer. I don't know what's happening." "Lucas," her voice came through, sharp with panic. "Listen to me. You need to let go. You've done what no one else could, but you're not meant to carry this burden alone." I don't have a choice, Rhea. I can't stop it. The last thing Lucas heard before the pain became unbearable was Rhea's voice, steady and calm. You don't have to do it alone. We'll find a way. Everything went black. When Lucas woke, he was no longer in the Galthrex flagship. His body felt heavy, sluggish, like he was swimming through thick water. His eyes opened to a familiar sight, Earth. The deep blue oceans and sprawling green lands stretched beneath him. He was floating in the sky, the feeling of weightlessness almost comforting. But the power inside him was still there, dormant now, but it hadn't left. He could feel it like a faint pulse, a quiet hum beneath the surface of everything. Earth's power was still connected to him. Lucas, Rhea's voice came again, distant but clear. Can you hear me? He blinked, his head clearing. Rhea, his voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. What happened? We got you out of there, she said, relief flooding her voice. You're safe, you did it. Earth is safe. Lucas took a deep breath, his chest still tight from the energy that had overwhelmed him. I didn't think I'd make it. You did more than make it, Lucas. You saved us. You saved everything. He looked out over Earth, the peaceful, beautiful planet that had been his home. It still felt like part of him, and in that moment he knew that even though the battle had ended, the journey for humanity had just begun. The core had awakened, yes, but it had also given them a new beginning, a new purpose. Earth would never be the same, and neither would he. Thank you, Lucas, Rhea said softly. Thank you for everything. Lucas smiled, his eyes never leaving the blue planet below. I didn't do it alone, we did it. And for the first time, Lucas truly understood the strength of humanity. It wasn't just about power, it was about the will to survive. And with that, he knew Earth would endure.